Hello and welcome to Forever Rugby on Forever Sport, and some very, very worrying news as both the South Africa versus Georgia match as well as the British and Irish Lions versus the Bulls matches for this weekend are both under threat after COVID cases in both the Springbok camp as well as the Bulls camp. A decision is expected to be made today from the Medical Advisory Committee about whether these matches will go on. But before we start talking about what's going on, what the sort of situation, what the likelihood is, please remember to smash a like on the video and subscribe to the channel as well. And we'll start with the Springbok. So yesterday, the Springbok press conference was cancelled. We were supposed to have a media engagement at about 1 o'clock yesterday, and we were all on the call and waiting to happen, and then they had to sort of postpone it. And a statement was then made that Lua Diaga has returned a positive test within the Springbok camp, and as a result, the entire squad is currently isolating, and therefore they had to cancel their practice yesterday. So obviously, Lua Diaga will be tested once again, as for all the other players and stuff like that. And then a decision is going to be made today about what's going on. Was it a false positive, or is he actually positive? In which case, how many players with close contacts and stuff like that? What's the situation, and what sort of players will have to go into isolation, etc., etc. In terms of that game, Rassie Erasmus was very confident when he gave a press conference about 2 weeks ago. In fact, I think it was about 10 days ago, where he said that they've got so many players who are sort of in by bubbles and stuff like that. And with the whole protocol being in place, he said that there should never be an issue with having to field a Springbok side. He said that they can draft players into the Springbok side. So basically, for example, as it stands, it's a 46-man Springbok squad. So if it's a case of 20 or 25 people have to go into isolation, there's still in theory enough players to be able to field a 23. But also, they can draft players in from the provincial setup. So, for example, teams like the Sharks and the Lions, stuff like that, and even the Stormers, players who aren't playing this weekend, if they can sort of produce negative tests, stuff like that, they can come into the squad and can join the squad. So, we could start potentially see sort of players like that coming into the squad as well. So Rassie Erasmus was very confident during that press conference that there should never be a reason to try and cancel the Springboks versus Georgia again. They said the Springboks should always have numbers. And so in theory, it looks like we should still be able to have a test match on Friday. It is a bit concerning that the fact that both these, to be fair, the Bulls isn't a bye bubble that's been compromised, but the Springboks is a bye bubble that's been compromised. So, whether it's just, as I say, a case of a false positive or something like that, they kind of need to understand what is going wrong, because the British and Irish Lions have not had a single case, and they've been in the country for almost they arrived last week Monday, so they've been in the country for over a week. They've travelled and everything like that, and they've played a full game against the Sigma Lions. No issues there. The Sigma Lions also had no issues with their bubble, no positive tests and stuff like that. A couple of players were just couldn't get fit enough to feature, but there were no issues in terms of COVID related to either of the Lions sides. For the Sharks, for example, there's no issues at this stage, and no cases. They went into a bye bubble last week and are set to play tomorrow against the Lions. So that game there's absolutely no issue whatsoever. So for the Springboks, it'll be a question of how does Lua Diaga test positive? Where does the bubble get compromised? Are there players coming in, playing out? He's coming from injury, so is he going to an outside person? What's the situation with that? And that's, I think, where it becomes a little bit tricky, because it's only a bye bubble for as long as people are staying inside. As soon as somebody sort of breaks and stuff like that, it can be compromised. So we have to wait and see what that. We should get more news about that today. In terms of the Bulls versus the Lions, it's a little bit more worrying. The Bulls were set to go into a bio bubble yesterday, on Monday. They're supposed to be going to a 5-day bio bubble. That's the whole plan, apparently. And they test before they go into the bubble. And apparently several players, as well as a couple of people in the management, have tested positive, and as a result couldn't go into that bio bubble. And that's why this game is currently being sort of a bit up in the air. It can't be confirmed yet how many players, which players, and stuff like that. In fact, there's actually been no official statement. Supersport writer Brendan Null broke the story last night, saying that he has independently confirmed that there are several players who have tested positive for the Bulls camp that were supposed to be going to the bubble. First things first, I don't understand why it's become a 5-day bubble, when this could have been something that could have been extended to, it was supposed to be a week originally. I don't understand why it's not a 10-day bubble. The Bulls, after their match was cancelled last week, why did they not go into a bubble on, sort of Wednesday? And then players who, might have tested positive, could have retested and stuff like that, and they would have had time to try and bring players up. The ramifications of this game not taking place is huge, both financially and in terms of the entire tour itself. It's a game that only happens every 12 years. So if you think of these players who test positive, if they don't face the British and Irish Lions, chances are they will never get the chance again. Um, there's a lot of people sort of saying that the tour should have been called off or postponed. The tour cannot be postponed. That's the reality. If this tour did not take place now, it wouldn't take place for another 12 years. So that is why this tour has had to take place now. It's not as easy as saying, we'll just move it later in the year. You've got top 14, Premiership, Currie Cup, United Rugby Championship, test windows, which all come into play. It's such a congested fixture list as it is at the moment that, you can't just simply say, oh, well, we'll just do it in October, because that just throws out, people have got contractual obligations. You might have players who are involved in top 14 don't get released, stuff like that. It's the same reason why people they cannot move it to next year, because they've already got tours and stuff like that that are lined up for next year. You've got World Cup preparation and stuff like that, and there might be major issues with players who are nationally contracted not being released to the British and Irish Lions. So this is the only time this tour can take place. So that's why if people are saying that this tour shouldn't have taken place now, you are saying that the tour shouldn't take place at all. Unfortunately, financially, it's so important that this tour takes place. And I genuinely think that there was no reason why it cannot take place safely. We've had, as I said, during the second wave, when infections were sort of a similar sort of rate, and similar sort of positivity rate, we managed to successfully have cricket tours, both women's and men's tours. We also had the Currie Cup going on time. There were a couple of Currie Cup games that were disrupted, but they were in biobubbles. The England and the Proteas and Sri Lanka, for example, Proteas and Pakistan women, they were in strict biobubbles, and that they functioned. There were no issues, there were no tests, stuff like that, and it functioned very, very well. So I think that a biobubble does actually work. We've just had the SA Under 20 series down in Stellenbosch, and that's all worked very well. We had the Varsity Cup, which worked very well. These biobubbles can work. It's just a case of getting them right. And I think for me, I don't understand why something that is so financially important, why they would risk making it such a short time. All these players who have tested positive. This is now 5 days before the game. The game's on Saturday. Where's the time now? But what I will say is that if there's one squad in South Africa who can probably cope with moving a lot of players, it's the Bulls. Just in the last week, they've had the arrival of Lionel Pooh, Ruan Combrink, Jacques Duplessis, Johan Goosen. That's almost a third of a team which has just arrived, just for new players. And they only had about 5 players going to the Springbok squad. So they've got a lot of players in that squad. I think the fact that they fielded that side against the Western Province means there are a lot of players. You don't look. The last thing we need is club players playing against the British and Irish Lions. I don't think it'll get that stage. But I think the Bulls have got a very, very big squad. They should be able to cope with 5 or 6 players who might not be available. It just comes to into an issue of how many players have to isolate. Are there close contacts? Where does it sort of lie? So the Medical Advisory Committee, which is sort of making all the decisions within the Lions tour, as well as the Springbok thing, they were going to be making decisions today about what's going on. Because if this match against the Bulls gets cancelled, that's it. You can't reschedule. There's no time. It won't happen. And so I don't know if it's a case of then you try and maybe move the Stormers game to this weekend. The Stormers wouldn't be happy about that. Do you cancel the Currie Cup game tomorrow between the Western Province and Griquas and say, listen, will you play the Lions on Saturday and move the Bulls to next week? Do you move the Bulls to next week Wednesday and move the SAA to Saturday? I don't know if that's an option. It becomes very difficult because the venues were supposed to change. So do you then, as I said, do you maybe bring the SAA game forward to Saturday at Ellis Park? It's so. Even then you can't really do that because the Springboks are playing on Friday. So it's such a tricky situation. I don't quite know what they do if this game can't take place, because the likelihood it would just be cancelled. We wouldn't have a Bulls versus thing, but that would be, as I said, a huge financial hit if this game is not taken. You think of broadcasting rights, you think of all the sponsorship money, which they're not going to be happy about because you missed out on an entire opportunity, entire 80 minutes, for exposure and stuff like that. So there really are some huge ramifications if this doesn't take place. So we'll keep you updated exactly what's happening. Nothing's been cancelled yet. Nothing. I need to reinforce that. No decisions have been made yet. There's been no official report about the size and stuff like that. This is just based on a single report came out of Sport. There has been a confirmation about the positive test within the Springbok camp, and a decision will be made today about what's going on there. But so we'll keep you up to date with what's going on. Please do smash the like video, subscribe to the channel for your latest news. My name is Steven. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll chat to you soon.